don't take us as like, preachers of gospel certainty, but we're going to have some fun because who doesn't want to, lay a little side cash, provided that it's legal. Cough, cough, John Mateer, cough, cough. All right. So, Ethan, final segment. You have some interesting insights into USC's play calling and what's happening in preseason camp.
Yeah, so I saw a little something about how, in some of the practices, USC's been lining up multiple running backs in the same backfield. So it'll be like Waymond Jordan and Bryan Jackson, in kind of an option play. And, that's kind of popped up in some of the highlights. There's a, really popular video of Waymond Jordan, running in practice that was making the rounds and that everyone was kind of sharing and getting excited about Waymond Jordan. And if you look really closely, you can see that in the backfield there was also Bryan Jackson there as well, kind of ready to take the option if that's what happened. So, and people are basically saying that it is kind of reminiscent of when Lincoln Riley had Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine at Oklahoma, and they're wondering if he's going to kind of get back to that sort of offensive play calling, which, I think would be really interesting. And with the depth that they supposedly have at running back, that could be really beneficial. But so, a little bit of a new look, maybe kind of answering some of the pleas we've had for the last several months about running the ball a bit more, and just also changing things up a bit, not just calling creative pass plays per se, but getting a little bit more creative in the run game. That's something, in addition to not calling the run enough, that was another thing that people have been frustrated with about USC, is just kind of the uncomplicated, very straightforward run play calling. So I just think that is all encouraging and something to watch in these first few games for sure is if they try that out.
This is a conversation we've had in previous weeks, but now this is kind of a new layer. Okay, they're practicing some option plays, so it puts a little meat on the bone. It gives us a little bit of an indication of where this thing's going. So that package is going to be part of the reality for Jaden Mayava. So we've kind of talked in general terms, Ethan, over the past month or so, in terms of how much do you throw, how much do you run. But here it's a little bit different. It's how much should it be, quote unquote, traditional running game versus option running game, how the mixture should be, and how many specialty plays in the playbook do you show in these first three games: Missouri State, Georgia Southern, Purdue. Michigan State, I think Michigan State needs to be taken more seriously than Purdue. Not that Purdue shouldn't be taken seriously, but I view Purdue as pretty much, a team that USC should trample, period. Michigan State I wouldn't quite put in the same category, but of course all four games until Illinois are games that should easily go into the USC win column. But because of this soft on-ramp this season, just how much should USC and Lincoln Riley be showing in the playbook in the first three games? How do you obviously want to practice certain things in live game situations, but you don't want to give Illinois and Brett Bielema and his staff too much to look at on film. You want to save the really good stuff, keep it in the liquor cabinet instead of displaying it right out there. So what's the mix relative to traditional run game versus option packages?
I think the first 3-4 games, like you mentioned, I almost don't want to see any option plays at all, just because, like you said, I want to keep that one under wraps for sure. And I also think that it's just a great way for you to see how, these running backs kind of stand up as the primary back, as the only guy in the backfield, as the more traditional guy, because at some point, USC has these three very talented running backs, but you kind of want to have a guy who's the go-to guy in the clutch situations. And, when you absolutely need to get the running game going against these tough defenses. So I think especially in a season where there's seemingly a lot more even in terms of skill and potential compared to the last few seasons where there's a clear-cut number one guy, I think you just want to see how they kind of pound the rock, to kind of put it that way, the first few games. And Then when like you said, when it gets to Illinois, then you surprise the Illinois coach with an option play. But that doesn't mean neglecting to practice that, because you obviously don't want to run the option play and then Mayava makes a poor decision, or it's the players just don't know how to run it and it's too complicated or whatever. But I think that that's something that you can kind of hammer home in practice. If you want to run it, once or twice, do it in the very first game, the Missouri State game, because Illinois is going to be a lot more concerned with watching tape on the two Big Ten games, on the Purdue game and on the Michigan State game, than they are going all the way back to the Missouri State game and watching tape on that, because it's a little bit more about how USC is matching up against the Big Ten, matching up against the Big Ten on the road, et cetera, matching up against Big Ten size. So yeah, if you're gonna run any fancy plays at all, I say do it in that first game especially, and the first two games in particular. Maybe you want to just kind of run a little fun one by Clay Helton to let him know who's really having fun here, and who's coaching a really small program now that has no chance of making the college football playoff. But yeah, just not too much, just to prove the concept, show the players that they can do it in the game once or twice, and do it early. Don't do it in Purdue, or don't do it against Michigan State unless you absolutely have to, unless the Michigan State game gets closer than people think it's going to be. So yeah, I just say not too much, maybe once or twice, but just see who can stand up as the number one back and the solo back in the backfield as well. I think that's a little bit more important.
Yeah, just get a little taste. Don't eat too much, but just get a little taste. Make sure it's just properly seasoned here at the Voice of College